Welcome to the Wellness Rebel Show, where you reclaim your health and tap into your body's healing power. I'm your host, Fatima, here to empower you with the knowledge and tools to take charge of your well-being. Whether you want to boost energy, improve mindset, or unlock vitality, this is your go-to source for practical advice and inspiration. It's time to step into your power and live a life of health and freedom. Welcome to the revolution. Welcome back to the Wellness Rebel Show. Today I have Corey Dunn. She's just a mom, but she knows how to read, and she's a co-host of Modern Ancestral Mamas podcast. Welcome, Corey.
Thank you so much. I'm glad to be here.
I'm so excited for you to be here. All right, let's start off with, first off, why don't you explain why you want, to be introduced as just a mom? So you were just talking about that.
Yeah, I know. People get mad at me for saying that I'm just a mom, because everybody knows that motherhood and being a stay-at-home mom or parent is a huge job, right? I have 4 kids ranging from 13 down to 4, and we homeschool. So obviously I am doing a lot, right? But I am just a mom. And I like to say that because I think it's important for people to realize that even if you don't have a nutrition degree or a research degree or anything, you can still be the person in your home that is doing the research, that is out there reading up on things, that is learning how to do things that maybe you didn't grow up with in your own home. So I actually think it's important that I say I'm just a mom.
I love that though, because that is really, I get it too. Like, don't make your role small by saying just, but then we also just want to make sure that everyone knows that, hey, you don't need to have a medical background or whatever when they ask you what your background is when you're sharing things that you're researching, right?
Right.
Like,
and I think it's
read.
important, right? I know how to read. And I think it's important that other people realize that they have the same ability. We all know how to read. We all have the same internet access.
Yeah.
Like, we can all do this same research. So I'm just a mom talking to other moms.
Okay. So can you tell us the catalyst to why you started doing the research and, going to switching to like the ancestral motherhood, if we want to call that. But what was the catalyst for that journey?
So I always say that I grew up with a crunchy mom before crunchy moms were a thing. So I grew up with a lot of stuff kind of being in my life, but I wasn't really aware of it because I was a child. And then when I got to college, I moved out of my parents' house. I kind of went and did my own thing. And I was just living that life. I was tired a lot. I was getting sick more often, but I just chalked it up to college stress and, living in a dorm with a million other people, that kind of stuff. I just chalked it up to that. So then I got married right out of college. I had a baby, and I was still perpetually tired. Although then I had a bout of postpartum anxiety. It wasn't necessarily depression, but and I chalked that up to my son just didn't sleep very well. And I mean, like, really didn't sleep well. Like, I was so tired and I was working and my husband was working. So it was like, a lot of things happening all at once. So that I chalked up that part of my life to that. Then my second baby was born, and she developed eczema all over her body, from about where her shirt would come up to where her socks came up. So, and it was horrible. It was just like, it was awful. So that was around when she was 6 months old. From about the time she was 6 months up until she was about a year old, we tried all the conventional things. I did what my doctor was telling me to do. We did steroids, a steroid cream, which she screamed when I put it on her body, and she bolted, like she just ran away from me. And that put off a light in my brain. And then by the time we get to her first birthday, so 6 months of this, my mom says, hey, you maybe should think about diet. And I was thinking, no way, like, eczema is a topical thing. It's obviously what you're putting on your skin or what it's in your laundry detergent, or, these things that everybody associates eczema with. And she said, I actually think that maybe I've done some research and I think it's maybe food related. So we cut out gluten and we cut out dairy. And within a week, my daughter's skin went from this like patchy, red, itchy, scaly all over her body to nothing within a week. And it just like pushed me over that edge of food is not everything. I don't want to say it's everything, but food is enormous. And I
Yeah.
think before that, I had considered food as related to health, but related to health in terms of weight, not necessarily in terms of overall health. But I think that really shifted it in my brain. And I went and I just went, holy mackerel, nobody knows about this. If I didn't know about this and I grew up with this stuff, nobody knows about it. And
Yeah.
I want all of my friends and everybody else who has a child and is an adult, but I want parents to know how much the food that they're feeding their children is affecting them. And it just kicked me over that precipice, and I just have been falling for 11 years.
So, how do you, I love that story. A lot of times, yeah, it is, like you said, a lot of times most moms will think that it's something topical or, something that like in their laundry detergent or the clothes. And then toward like kind of it's the last piece is like changing what we're feeding them or even feeding ourselves. Because if we're breastfeeding them, then we're passing on, whatever the um, chemical compound or that affects that eczema and makes it worse. Except for my son though, with him I did the whole, I was like, my husband was to the point and was like, stop restricting yourself because it's not really helping
Yeah. Well,
for
that can
him.
also be a problem.
But yeah, definitely. So once that, once you started to open your mind, like about, yeah, food is a big piece of the puzzle for symptoms and for help us heal. What did you start to do? Like, did you to be able to spread the message?
I already had a Instagram account, and I had already for myself had done a Whole30, and I'd been posting about that. And that was back when Whole30 was kind of new. Nobody'd really heard of it, and paleo was really new. And so I started posting about that. Our family went paleo for about 5 years. I had a blog, I had my Instagram account. I started just posting about it on my Facebook, my Instagram, my blog, and I didn't really reach a ton of people, it was never like I've never had the goal of having to be an influencer or whatever. I really have just always had this goal of whoever needs to hear this is going to hear it. And if they're going to hear it from me, great. If they're going to hear it from somebody else, awesome. But I'm going to post, I'm going to put out there what I know, what I have learned, what I have discovered, and just trust that whoever needs to find it is going to find it.
Technical difficulties.
Happens all the time.
All right. Just, go a little backwards on where you said you're not
Okay.
trying to be an influencer.
Yeah. So I've never had the goal of being an influencer. That's never been something that I have aspired to, sought. I still don't actually, I don't want to do that. My goal has always just been to share what I have, share my recipes, share what I've learned, share things that I find to be helpful and inspiring. Trust that whoever is going to find that needs to find that and hear it from me will find it, and they will hear it from me. If they hear it from somebody else, totally fine. I just want people to experience deep health and healing, especially for their children. So yeah, I don't know. I think that's weird to hear from somebody who does a lot.
Yeah.
But I don't really care. I just want people to feel good.
Yeah. So, what would be your tips? Because, sometimes I know it starts from when the kids are little. So, let's say someone started off, eating processed food or, not as much whole foods. What would you say to the parent or the parents Like, what would be good strategies to help with the transition and how to encourage their kids to start to eat the other thing that's healthier?
I think that that can be such a barrier for some people that parents think, oh, my kid is 11 or my kid is 15 or something like that. And I'm just now learning about this, but, I want them to eat better. I want so badly to just like hug that mom and say, it's okay. Like you can only move forward. You can't ever go back. So you can only take what you've learned and what you're and new information and then move forward with it. And that's fine. And the good news is that pretty much any food can be made in a real food way. Any food. And I mean that. Ice cream, pizza, there are great hot dogs on the market. Like all these things that your kid is probably used to eating can be made in a real food and deeply nourishing way. I make like totally standard American diet type food. I just make it in a real food way. Almost all of our meals are just we had tacos last night and we had meatloaf and mashed potatoes the other night. Like it's nothing is weird. It's
Yeah.
all just normal food,
Yeah. Yeah.
which was really important for my husband too, because my husband grew up in a completely standard American diet home. So he had totally standard American food growing up. And when I started doing this research, he was like, look, I'm not interested, and I was like, okay, cool. But like, we're doing this at home and you can eat whatever you want when you're not home. But like, I also then had to respect that he is an equal partner in our marriage and that he gets to come home and say, "Hey, I'd really like to have burgers this weekend." And I am going to go, "Okay, great. We'll have burgers this weekend." You know?
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be weird food. And I think
Right.
that's a problem actually that people don't understand that. Like they look at the food that's put out on the like Instagram, like on social media and stuff, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, I have to eat fish heads or I have to eat," like which is fine if that's culturally what you grew up eating, but like if you grew up eating pizza, then you got to figure out a way to be able to eat pizza because as much as people shame American food culture, we do have a food culture. And I think it's a shame to knock that down. Like we don't have to eat processed stuff, but we can still eat, our cultural foods, even if they are American cultural foods, and just make them in a real food way.
Yeah. Sorry, my kid's over here right now. Here you go, baby.
Hi.
Um, I love that. Yeah, we definitely don't need to make weird foods.
Yeah.
Do you guys still eat out or do you just 100% eat at home?
No, we're not 100% anything. We eat out it's important to me because like I said, I'm fascinated by food cultures and I think America has all these amazing pockets of food culture. And it's important to me to be able to experience those. So if I go, like my husband and I went to Chicago a couple months ago and we went and had some Chicago beef sandwich that's apparently a thing. And we had the pizza. And I will tell you, like my stomach doesn't feel good after I eat those things.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things where I look at it and go, I know what's going to happen,
Right. Yeah.
and right now it's worth it. But it's not all the time, that was in March.
Yeah.
So it was we eat out maybe a couple times a month.
Yeah. Yeah.
And generally, if we're eating out in our hometown where we know the places to go, we'll be a little bit more choosy about where we go.
Yeah. It's definitely not an all or nothing approach, right?
I mean, it can be if you want, but I think a lot of people will get really, I think, especially early on when you first start doing stuff and you're brand new to the world and you're like,
Yeah.
wow, I never ever want to eat those things again because they're all poison. And I think once you've kind of settled in a little bit, you've kind of walked the road a little while, you can start going, okay, like the month of December, right? We're inundated with Christmas parties or whatever.
Yeah.
If you go to 5 Christmas parties in the month of December, 4 Christmas parties, something like that. My math might be a little off right now off the top of my head. But if you go to 4 Christmas parties in the month of December, you still have 88 other meals that month.
Yeah.
Like it's not a big deal. And
Yeah.
if you have maybe celiac or something where it's really going to mess you up, then don't eat that. Like, don't let the food get in your way of living your life.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that because I've seen so many that in the beginning, like you said, like they get so, I mean, I guess sometimes sort of like obsessive with like the
Mm-hmm.
food that they're eating to the point of where they have that food fear. What's it called? Like
Yeah.
ortho something. I can't remember.
Orthorexia.
Yeah, that term. And
Mm-hmm.
then, but then also to me, it's like, okay, once you start feeling the fear, then don't also be like, okay, I'm going to stop eating real food. I'm just going to keep like go back to eating like junk food or not fearing like that shouldn't be a reason for food fear, and so that's why it should be all about balance, right?
Mm-hmm. I started thinking about it because my my grandmother, I started thinking about it in terms of my grandmother's getting older,
Mm-hmm.
and she used to host dinner at her house every Sunday, and she would always make dessert. And she had this chocolate cake with peanut butter frosting that she would make that was just everybody's favorite. And I started thinking about, like, I went to her house when we were doing paleo in the middle of all of that, and she had made dinner, and I like turned down this cake. And I started thinking about it. I'm like, what if that's the last time she makes this cake? What if that's the last time she makes this cake? And I said no because it didn't have organic flour or made with wheat
Yeah.
when I don't have an allergy to wheat. Like, it's just I think it's bad for you. I mean, honestly, like, if you want to do that, I don't have any like shame to give you. It's something to think about.
Yeah.
Like, maybe it's worth it to have that piece of cake. Maybe it's not worth it to have the grocery store cake at the kid's birthday party. You can make
Yeah.
choices like that and weigh your options and have that freedom, that food freedom, because you know what it is, you know what's in it, you know what those ingredients are, what they're going to do to you, short term, long term.
Yeah.
And you can just kind of rest in the knowledge and have some peace about making a choice.
Yeah. Yeah. And I feel like that's a homemade cake, even if it's not made with all organic ingredients and whatever is the criteria for anyone that they can eat it, is definitely way better than grocery store cake.
Right. Costco cake. I mean, I think, but you get to make that choice, right?
Yeah. 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 I could never understand. I know why the list of ingredients for cakes at stores are so long.
It's ridiculous.
Because if you think about it, if you're making that cake at home, your ingredient list is like probably half or maybe a quarter of that
Right.
long list. Always, yeah. So eat the cake.
Right. Eat the cake.
Yeah, no, yeah. I feel like when you deprive yourself because you think, because you know all the things that you know, and then you're like, I really want to eat the cake, but I'm not going to eat the cake because I know it's not made with organic XYZ. You'll probably get tempted to eat something else or something worse because you didn't fulfill that desire of eating the
Right.
cake.
Yeah, sometimes it's just better to eat the cake. But again, like, I know that the cake from the grocery store, I don't care about.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I could take it or leave it. Actually, I don't want to take it. I just want to, like, I just don't care about it. It doesn't taste good. It's not like, it's just not the cake that I want to eat.
Yeah.
But my grandmother's cake, that's a different story.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. So how did you get your kids on board? So I would imagine your older one, your first one was a little older before you made the switches, right? Or
He
not really?
was about, let's see, he was almost 3.
Okay.
So he's not that old. People always like assume that means he's easy
Yeah.
with food. He's not. And I think it's interesting because people also assume that if you start young then it
Ah,
always works out, always.
right.
And take my example, it doesn't always work out.
Mhm.
You can still end up with a picky kid. And so I think part of the problem was he went to school for the first kindergarten and first grade, and he was very much influenced by what the other kids were eating. And he asked me specifically one day to make his lunch look more like the other kids.
Ah.
And I was like, okay, so we're here. um, so that was a whole thing with him, and he has always been kind of picky. So around, let's see, I'm trying to remember how old he was at this point. He was probably 6 or 7, and I just had a third baby. Yeah, I'm trying to think if my timeline is right. It doesn't really matter. He was around that age. We had 3 kids at that point, and before that, we had lived in a really tiny apartment where we didn't have a family dining table. Like, we had a really small, tiny apartment. We didn't have room for a dining table. So what we had was this like low to the ground table that the kids would sit at. They would sit on the floor and eat from, and my husband and I would sit on the couch. And so even if we were sitting and eating at the same time, we didn't have like a family dining experience. We weren't having family meals.
Mhm.
Okay. So then I realized we had missed this huge opportunity to create a family food culture. So I would serve the kids, I would eat by myself or even with them, but it was like behind them and they're on the floor. Or even if I sat with them, my husband wouldn't sit on the floor. It was just like we weren't together really, even if we were in the same room and technically together. We weren't really experiencing food together. And I realized that was a big something we were missing. And before this, also had this massive stress coming into meals because I had spent all this time researching and buying, sourcing, because I wasn't just going to the grocery store anymore. I was like driving to farms. And money on
Mhm.
buying more expensive real food ingredients and time creating the food, making the food. And I was getting stressed out that my kids weren't eating the food. And
Yeah.
I'm also going, I know, like, because mom's done all this research, I know you need all this, like this nutrition, and I know that you need these nutrients. So I need you to eat this. Like, it was a stressful environment and would often end not in necessarily yelling, but like high pressure environment trying to get the kids to eat the food. So I read this book called French Kids Eat Everything. And it's not necessarily a real food book, but it is a kind of how to set up a family food culture around a dinner table, basically. We had this giant chalkboard wall in our kitchen, and I drew this huge peace sign on the wall. And I said, we are not fighting at dinner anymore. So we had moved out of that apartment. We had a house. We had a dining room. We had this chalkboard wall. We had a table with chairs. And I remember sitting down with my kids, however old they were, I can't remember exactly. But I said, okay, and my husband was there, and I said, we are doing something different now. We are not going to fight about food anymore. We're going to follow these guidelines from the Ellen Satter Institute, which is the Division of Responsibility, is what she calls it. And basically, it is where the parents are responsible for what is served, when it is served, and where it is served. And then the kids are responsible for how much they eat and if they eat.
Mm.
So that was just a massive game changer for us because it took the pressure off of me. It took the pressure off of them. It gave
Yeah.
them the things they're supposed to be responsible for. It gave me and my husband the things we're supposed to be responsible for. And everybody had very clear definitions of their roles. And we made it very safe. It wasn't, if you don't eat this, you're going to starve. There was
Yeah.
always something at the table that I knew that they would eat. It doesn't have to be their favorite thing, but it knew they would eat it, even if that was just a cup of raw milk or a slice of sourdough with butter. Like, I knew they would eat it. And then we'd say, this is what's for dinner. It's roasted chicken, roasted vegetables, and rice, and, cut up apples or something. And I know my kids 100% are going to eat the cut up apples. It's kind of iffy on the other stuff. Okay. So if they decide not to eat that, we say, it's okay. We'll have dinner or we'll have breakfast in the morning.
Mhm.
You don't
Yeah.
have to eat it. It's
Yeah.
okay. but this is what's served. We're not making anything else. And there will be breakfast in the morning. It's not going to be the same meal. Like, I think that's where a lot of people get stuck on that, where they say, now, I'm going to put your plate away. And if you want to do this, fine. I think it's probably you're setting yourself up for failure, but whatever. They take the plate of uneaten dinner and stick it in the fridge and save it for breakfast.
Yeah.
Who wants to eat that? Like, if you didn't want to eat it the first time, you're not going to want to eat it again.
Yeah.
And I don't think that really sets you up for a good parent-child trust relationship. I think it probably sets you up for strife. And that's not really, like, you don't need to add strife to a parent-child relationship. There's already plenty.
Right. Yeah.
It doesn't need to be around food.
Yeah. It's almost like fueling the struggle even more when you do that.
Yeah. Right. Because, kids have so little, especially the younger they are, the truer this is. They have so little that they're in charge of in their lives.
Yeah.
Giving them more and more things that they can be in charge of. And food is one of those things that they have all the control over. Because unless you're force feeding them, which I don't suggest doing, that's the only thing they have true control over. They don't get to choose whether they're buckled in their car seat. They don't get to choose whether they, pick up their toys or not. They don't get to choose, like, maybe, but like the thing they really truly have the most control over is what they put into their mouth.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm going to have
So they are going to struggle with it if you make it a struggle.
You're right. I'm going to have to adopt that. I don't really have problems so much around meal times, thankfully, except right now, my 6-year-old has been kind of like, I'm starving, like a few hours before dinner. And then once the food's there, he would barely eat. And then he'd try to ask for something else because, like, oh, I don't like it. And now so before I was like, okay, well, we cater to him. And then now I'm more like, well, every time you ask for something else, you still don't eat it. So in my head, I'm like, maybe you are not hungry, or I don't know, like, you're asking for something else and you specifically asked for it and then you barely take 3 bites. It's like,
yeah.
So it's kind of like that has been kind of like the struggle lately in our household. So
yeah, I mean, kids go through like stages of needing more food and not, and the more we can trust them and encourage them to trust themselves, the better their future relationship with food is going to be.
Yeah, I can totally see that. We never force them to finish their food, either if they don't like it or if they're already full. Because I'm always like, "Are you full?" Like,
right.
I'm not gonna say you need to finish your food if you're full. If you're full, then you're full. Like, listen to your body, because that will create problems down the road. I'm sure when you're forcing them to like finish their food because it's whatever, wasteful or whatnot. So it's like we're trying to raise healthy kids.
Yeah. It is hard as a parent when you're looking at them going, I know you need protein, or I know you need, these nutrients in this food, or I spent $30 on that chicken, you better eat it. That is hard as a parent.
Yeah.
I think if you can figure out ways to repurpose food, that's a really good way. That's a really good way to alleviate that personal stress.
Yeah.
We have chickens now, and that's like my favorite thing is like, it's okay, the chickens can have it.
Right? Exactly.
The chickens will eat it and they're turning it into other food we can eat.
Yeah. Yeah, my kids are always like, which bowl's for the chicken? Which bowl's for the dog?
Yeah, exactly.
So, yeah, it doesn't go to waste, thankfully. It's like part of the circle of life.
That's exactly right. That's right. It cycles through.
Yeah. So did you do baby-led weaning with your kids?
I did. Yeah. I did kind of a mixture of purees and baby-led weaning. My first one was little, baby-led weaning was kind of a new thing. And I I kind of did this, like, what would a cave woman do, or what would a mother in Africa do? Like, that was my mantra.
Yeah.
Like, they don't have a food processor. That doesn't make sense to me.
Right.
What they have is their mouth.
Uh-huh.
What they have is what they've cooked. And they had, like, I guess they could have stone ground it, But what I would do, this sounds so nasty, and I apologize that it sounds gross, but I would like pre-chew food for that if it was hard, I would like
Yeah.
pre-chew it and then take it out of my mouth and put it in their mouth. I don't know. That sounds so gross. But
No, I'm like, they come from you. You can do that.
I know. Yeah. But yeah, it was like little baby bird type
Yeah,
situation.
yeah.
Um But yeah, we did mostly baby-led weaning because I started out with purees with my first, and then I was like, this is not like he wasn't into it.
Yeah.
I thought it was a lot more work than it needed to be, and it just didn't seem to make sense biologically. It just didn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
And I know there's a lot of people in the ancestral space who have problems with baby-led weaning. I think there I never avoided salt with my babies, which I
Mhm.
think is a critique that people have of baby-led weaning, because baby-led weaning, the official baby-led weaning says to avoid salt. And then the ancestral community says babies need salt because they need the minerals. I don't know. I think it's a kind of like common sense thing,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
having purees or smoothies or blended soups, like that is a texture that I want my kids to experience. So we did do some of those, like if our family was eating them, then I would
Yeah.
give it to the
Yeah.
baby. And we did avoid grains for the first probably until they were at least a year old, I think.
Yeah.
Except with my second, which is the one who developed eczema.
Yeah. Yeah. I know. I did baby-led weaning, but I didn't know about. Wait, I think I remember that, like, no salt added to their food. But then I was like, well, I'm not making them separate food. So they're gonna get all
Right.
the
Yeah.
flavors. And maybe
And
they were
it
just
doesn't taste good.
right? Or maybe
Food
they're just
without salt
talking
doesn't taste good.
maybe they're talking about table salt or iodized salt or something. Who
Well, right.
knows?
And I think that's where I was like, okay, I'm not giving them a bunch of sodium filled junk food.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm giving them really
Real
good
food.
mineralized sea salt or
Yep.
real salt or whatever.
Yeah.
Um, so I guess there's a semantic difference there
What would you say is the best first food for a kid for, a
for
6 month?
babies.
Yeah, for babies.
I definitely think that the egg yolk and liver stirred up thing, I did that with all my kids. That makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Whenever interested, when my younger two was, when we had the table in the dining room, they started getting interested in food, I would sit them in the high chair at the table with us, and I would give them uh like rubber spoons to play with or bowls or something, so they felt like they were engaged with the family. They were sitting with the family at mealtime. And so And then after that, I think we graduated to breast milk popsicles. So they had like there were tiny popsicle molds for babies that they have a big handle on. They can hold them. And we would make breast milk popsicles with them. And then after that, we went on to the egg yolk and liver, which I guess is technically, I was like spoon feeding them that. And then I would let them like make a mess in it and eat it off their fingers or whatever. And then from there, as long as we didn't have any reactions to food, which we never really did, I would just start feeding them whatever we were eating.
Yeah. How were you was the egg yolk soft soft boiled or was it raw?
Yeah, so I don't know. I think there's a couple of different ways you can do it. The way that I always did it was I took a whole egg and I boiled it, but left it really soft.
Mhm.
I don't remember how long you boil it for, but it's
Yeah.
less than jammy, like it's really soft.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
then when you can kind of crack it and peel the white off, and the yolk is just, I guess it's cooked barely,
Yeah.
um, but it's really still very runny. And then you take frozen liver and grate it with a fine grater, like a microplane,
Yeah.
um, and add a little pinch of sea salt, and that's it. I mean, it's really simple.
Yeah.
And it has so many things that are really, really good for them at that stage.
Right. And so the way that you were feeding your kids, from such a young age, I know you said that sometimes they're still difficult, but do you notice that they're not as picky or do they still have that?
They've all gone through stages of being picky, and some of them are more picky than others.
Yeah.
And I kind of have gotten to the point of just trusting their stages, and trusting that it'll work itself out, which is not easy. Like that, I'm not saying that that's an easy point to come to, but if you can get there, it is a lot better for you as a parent to just like trust their bodies and them to make those choices. Like my son, I think it was cucumbers for years, like years and years and years. He refused to try cucumbers because we don't even tell our kids they have to try something.
Yeah.
He just refused to eat them. And I was always like, okay, cool. Like he doesn't want them. I didn't stop serving them. We all still like them. And I would put them in his sister's lunch boxes, or we'd have them, if we had like a vegetable tray or whatever, or we'd have them on, with like Greek food, like if we made a Greek pita wrap or something, they would be out and you could choose to put them on your food or not. And his sisters love them. And they would always be like, these cucumbers are so good. And we grew them one year. And he was finally like, you know what? I'll try it. I'm not kidding. He was probably 12 years old. It was probably like last year. And that had been when he was, really little up to when he was 12 years old. And he finally was like, I'll try him. And then he tries one. He's like, these are actually pretty good. I'm like, I honestly, like, I was not in the conversation. I was like back in the room somewhere, but like I could see it and hear it.
Yeah.
And I was kind of like, yes, really quietly.
Yeah.
A cheer session by myself.
Yeah. That's funny.
So yeah, I mean, I think they still all have those things. The other day, one of my daughters told me, I only like sourdough bread. I don't like any other bread. And I was like, okay, well, tonight we're not having sourdough bread. We're having this other kind. Like, you don't have to eat it. That's fine.
Yeah.
But I'm not catering to you because you're 7. I mean, I'm not catering to any of them. Like, I make the choices.
Right. Yeah.
I do. That's not true.
How you make
I
it
do
easy
involve
for you.
them.
Yeah.
I mean, I do involve them in like, they oftentimes will get asked, what do you guys want for dinner this week? Or, hey, I've got chicken in the freezer we need to use up. What do you want to have with it? So I'm not trying to like exclude them from the process or give them no authority over it. But, ultimately I'm the one who's going to be doing it.
Yeah. I mean, here at our household, my kids are funny, especially the 2 older ones. Because we'll be like, okay, we're going to have ground beef. It's either going to be hamburger gravy or spaghetti. And they always choose the opposite of what the other one says.
Oh, no.
I know. And I think they do it on purpose.
Of course.
Yeah. And so now I tell my husband, I'm like, well, maybe we should just not ask them. And then if they want to eat it, they eat it. If they don't, then they can have breakfast. Because we're not a restaurant. We're not like, hey, can I take your order?
Right. No, I mean, it's exhausting if you do that.
Yeah.
It's totally exhausting and just not practical.
Totally. I follow this like I think she's a dietitian or a nutritionist, but for picky eaters. Like she kind of like gives parents strategies on how to introduce food and all this stuff. And then she did a reel about like asking her kid how they want their grilled cheese to be cut. And I was like, oh my God, I'm like, I do that. And now I made a monster. Because if you cut it wrong,
I know.
They freak out. And I'm just like, raw.
You're like, here's the knife. You can cut it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Because it's like, how do you want it in fourths and halves? Triangles, squares, rectangles?
I mean, we did my one daughter who told me she only wanted sourdough now. She went through this whole phase of like, I'm not eating the crust. Like, girl, like this is so annoying.
Right.
And I did. I finally said to her, okay, like here's it's a butter knife. She's not going to cut herself with it. But I'm like, fine, you do it. Yeah. I'm not doing this. I'm cooking for 6 people here. Like if you want to decide not to eat that, it's on you.
Right. Yeah. It's those Uncrustables commercials' fault.
I don't even know that I've ever seen one of those.
No, I've never seen a commercial of it, but it's like when you go to the grocery store, you see those Uncrustables. We don't eat those, but I'm just like, they see, because obviously in the beginning, they eat the whole thing, and then all of a sudden they're like, I don't like the crust. Like, since when? Like, where did this come from? I don't want it
Yeah, I
toasted.
don't know. I
What?
know. You mean like how you had it yesterday?
Yeah, yeah. I know. Kids are funny when it comes to food, I guess. It's kind of like a battle.
Yeah, I know it can be. I think that's why you have to be really careful about not forcing things with them,
Yeah.
because the less it's not that you're like giving them power, but like the more you give them your power,
Mhm.
the more they realize they can get under your skin about it and push your buttons.
Yeah.
And then nobody's having a good experience.
No.
So, like, and I'm saying this as somebody, like, this is where I come back to I'm just a mom, right? Like, I deal with all this stuff too. Like, I don't have
Yeah.
everything figured out. So, yeah, we're all there on that same boat dealing with I love bananas. Great, I'll buy 17 of them. I hate bananas. Why'd you buy so many?
Now it's gonna become banana cake.
Right. I know. Well, now we're freezing them because I can't use as many
Yeah. Oh my
before
gosh,
they
that
go bad.
happens all the time. I love grapes. Okay, we're gonna buy some more grapes, and then it becomes moldy because no one. All of a sudden, no one
Right.
likes grapes. Like, why do
Right.
they do that?
Happens all the time.
Yeah. All right. So I have this thing about some, like in mom groups and stuff. Let's say, so someone is asking, "How do I get my kid to drink more water? Because all they want to drink is juice." What would you say to
Don't
that
buy
mom?
juice.
Yeah.
I mean,
Right?
like, I know, and it sounds really simple to say, just don't buy juice, and it
Mhm.
is
Yeah.
because you're the boss. Your child's not the boss. They don't make money. They don't have a
Mhm.
bank account. They don't have
Yeah.
a, card that they can swipe. They don't get to make those choices. I mean, I don't it sounds simple, it is simple, it feels hard, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
Um And so I have a lot of compassion for moms who feel like that, but you've got to take back that is your role. Your role as the mother is to decide what to buy, decide what to make, decide your roles are what's served, when it's served, where it's served. Those are your roles. The children do not get to take over those roles. They have their own roles. And as soon as you can make that distinction, I mean, I literally printed something off and stuck it on my refrigerator. And I think I also wrote it on my chalkboard next to that peace sign. Like, took it so seriously to fall into those division of responsibilities that there was no question, you
Yeah.
know? So I'm not saying they can't have input or you can't say, what I do with juice is my kids take supplements. If my kids are taking supplements or tinctures or something like that, I'll put it in a little shot glass with a
Mhm.
little juice. Because one of their supplements, it does not taste good.
Yeah.
But it's liquid. So it just like mixes in if you use grape juice or sour cherry juice or pineapple juice, it mixes really well in those. And they just get a little shot glass
Yeah.
and they know that's all the juice they're getting. I don't know. I also don't think, forgive me, but I don't think water is the ultimate drink
Uh-huh.
option. Water's great, but unmineralized water is
Yeah.
not doing you any favors. And there's so many other drinks that are actually really nourishing that if you're having problems with water, like, it's okay. Give them raw milk.
Mhm.
Give them broth if they'll drink that. Um there's just so many other give them water kefir or milk kefir or kombucha. Like, there's so many other options
Yeah.
drink wise, especially if you need something that's a little sweeter with the juice, like water kefir is excellent for that.
Okay.
Um, but I don't know. If you realize that that your role is to be the gatekeeper of your home, you decide what comes in,
Yeah.
and you get to tell your kid no. It's not bad to tell your kid no.
Yeah.
It is hard, but it's not
It
bad.
is hard. Yeah, when did it ever become a thing where you can't tell your kid no?
Yeah, it's not a
Who
thing in
said
my house.
that? Right? No. That's what I keep telling my husband too before. Well, I grew up in the Philippines and a lot of the restaurants in the Philippines were all family style. And so I would always tell him, I'm like,
Oh,
we never
cool.
get to choose what my parents ordered. Like, what they ordered was there, and then we ate it. I'm like, here, because it's almost like individual serving.
Yeah.
And I feel like when you do eat out, it kind of makes them think like, "Oh, we can do this at home too.
Huh.
I can order something else."
That's so interesting. I didn't know that about the restaurants in the Philippines. That's such a better idea.
Yeah, yeah, a
I've
lot.
been to a
Most.
couple family style restaurants in the States, but it's usually like very southern food, you know?
Oh, okay. But yeah, it is. I mean, even a lot of like usually Asian and Chinese food usually is like served family style. But maybe they're. I'm not sure if they're doing away with that. But I know, yeah, most American restaurants do kind of like individual things, right?
Yes. I mean, you could be like, okay, we're going to order a couple of, the parents could just say, we're going to order a couple of entrees and split it amongst all of us.
Yeah,
You could
yeah,
order a salad and a seafood dish and a beef dish or something like that, and then split it among everybody. You could do that.
yeah.
Um, but you're
That's
right.
a
It's
good
not set
idea.
up like that. That would be kind of out of order.
Yeah, and a lot of times restaurants here will charge you a split plate. You tell them that you're
I
sharing.
know. But maybe if you say like we're ordering it, like we want our children to share this one, maybe they'd be a little bit more inclined to, I
Yeah,
don't know. I don't
yeah.
know. You kind of have to pick and choose there. It's
Right, right.
maybe it's okay to pay that split plate fee or whatever.
Yeah.
It
Or
might be
you can
worth
just
it.
ask for extra plates and split it yourself.
Yeah, probably the more simple way to do it.
Okay, how about let's talk about seed oils real quick.
Oof. Okay.
What's your take on seed oils and what are some ways that, easy ways for, you know, consumers to avoid them if they wanted to avoid it?
Yeah, I think seed oils are horrible.
Yeah.
Um I think that they are also very difficult to avoid, especially if you are buying convenience foods.
Mhm.
I think, buying, if you're going to buy chips or something, really your only options are, there's a couple of options that have either avocado, coconut
Yeah.
oil. Depends on the type of chip, right? But there's a few options out there, but they're always going to be more expensive.
Yeah.
So, and then the big one, I think, with seed oils, I mean, the easy answer is that the more you cook from home, the easier it is to avoid.
Yeah.
And I think for our family, the main thing that we buy, where I have to buy some, like where I don't necessarily want to make it at home all the time, is like chips, which we don't eat a lot of because they're more expensive and they're not super nourishing anyway. So, or nutrient dense. So then that kind of limits that option. But I
Yeah.
think one of the biggest things that Americans don't realize their seed oils are in is, first of all, it's those milk alternatives like
Mhm.
uh, oat milk.
Yeah.
Oat milk is basically seed oils and a little bit of oats and water. So don't do that. And then the other thing is the salad dressings and
Mhm.
marinades and things like that. You don't realize how simple those are to make. If you just make a little vinaigrette at home, it's so easy,
Yeah.
and it helps you to avoid those seed oils. So, yeah, I mean, I think, learning to read packaging, learning to read labels is really important. Cooking at home, I mean, it's
Yeah.
just the easiest way. If you're cooking at home, and you will avoid seed oils almost entirely,
Yeah. Yeah.
or you at least have the option to.
Is it okay to consume it here and there, especially if you have to eat out?
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, again, you get to make that choice.
Yeah.
There are more and more restaurants that are choosing not to use them. And the more you can encourage that and vote with your dollar and eat at those places, the better. But, sometimes you can't control what's available.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, it's again, like you have to think about how many meals you're getting. And if it's that one time,
Yeah.
like out of a month, even if it's once a month, I don't think it's a big deal.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
your body is made to detox, and your body is made to get rid of things it doesn't need. So if you especially if you are, nourishing it and eating really nutrient dense food and getting your sunlight and doing those detoxing pathway like dry brushing or rebounding or walking, all those things, then you're gonna be
Yeah. Yeah. No point in stressing out over it too much. 'Cause
I mean, stress is so bad for you
yeah.
too.
Yeah.
Just if you choose to eat it, then just be cool with it,
Yeah.
like go, okay, I'm good.
Right.
Or, you can ask sometimes, depending on the restaurant, you can ask them to cook in butter.
Mhm.
They almost always will have butter. Make sure you clarify butter and not like spread. But
Yeah. Yeah.
there are ways around it if you want to be kind of a pill in a restaurant. But if you want to just go and eat it at a restaurant, then just do like my husband and I are going on a date tomorrow. We don't get a lot of dates because childcare is expensive. But
Mhm.
we're going on a date tomorrow night. I'm so excited. And he chose the restaurant. It's not a restaurant that avoids seed oils. And I don't care because I'm
Yeah.
going out with my husband. We're going out without children. Like, we're going to have a great time. And it's just going to be like, I'm fine with it, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. You have to live a little and
And
enjoy life.
the enjoyment and
Yeah.
the beauty of a relationship. I mean, I'm always saying that relationships trump food. I don't know that we're allowed to say Trump anymore in that, but relationships trump food. Relationships come before food.
Yeah. Yeah.
Always, which is where it comes back to my grandmother's chocolate cake. It comes
Yeah.
back to eating with your family at Thanksgiving. Unless you have an allergy, then that one meal is not going to kill you.
Right? Yeah. Yeah. I'm jealous. My husband and I haven't gone on a date with just the two of us for a while too. We also have 4 kids,
Yeah,
but my
it's
youngest is
hard.
2. Yeah, it is very hard. And sometimes I would joke with my husband. I'm like, yeah, we need like let's just do it or whatever. And he's like, no, because you're not gonna enjoy yourself because you're gonna be stressed out about the 2-year-old or something like that.
Yeah.
And so there would be times though that it's just like me, him, and then my 2 younger kids. And then sometimes he'll joke. He's like, wow, it's so much easier with 2 kids. What were we thinking?
I know. My husband and I joked about that the other day because our 2 older kids are 11 and 13. And
Yeah.
he's like, man, this would have been so much easier if there's only two. Think of like we could have, gone to Europe and it's great. I love having 4 kids. I actually think I am a much better mom with 4 kids than I was with just 2 kids.
Right? I think it gets easier and
It
you
does.
you also get more relaxed, I think.
Mm-hmm.
We're gonna have our 5th too.
Congratulations. That's
Thank
awesome.
you.
I love
Yeah.
babies. My daughter said one time she was asked what her favorite animal was, and she said, "Am I allowed to say babies?" And I'm like,
Aww.
"Absolutely. Me too, girl. Me too."
That is so cute. That is so cute. That's awesome. All right, I always end the podcast by asking my guests, like a favorite mantra or a little golden nugget that they want to share, you know, and impart to the listeners.
I would say, I mean, I know we've talked about it already, but usually I will say, because this is a question that Hilda asks on her show often,
Okay.
and usually I will say just to cook at home, which
Uh-huh.
I think is a great nugget. But I think that in terms of children in the conversation that we're having today, I think implementing that division of responsibilities is going to be my answer. If you haven't, do that. I also think that book, that French Kids Eat Everything book, is really helpful. I also read a book around the same time called Born to Eat,
Okay.
and it is similar in learning to trust your children in that they know that they can feed themselves. Basically, they can choose what to eat and everything. It was really, really good. Neither one of them are ancestral at all, book wise. But I think they're really, really good books for parents to read.
Okay. We're going to share those all in the show notes in case you'll be interested in reading them. I'm probably going to get them too. Another book to read.
I read one of them while I was breastfeeding one of my babies.
Yeah.
probably my third baby. Like I would read it on my tablet or whatever while she was breastfeeding.
Yeah.
And my goal was like, I have to finish reading this before she turns 6 months old so that I can, implement it in her food journey.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much, Corey, for joining me today. Can you tell us where the listeners can find you if they wanted to reach out? Or wait, do you have a cookbook? I forgot.
I do. I have two I call them mini cookbooks.
Okay.
They are automatic downloads on my website. So you can just, if you buy them, then they just automatically get emailed to you. And so my website is fornutrientssake.com. The cookbooks are on there as well as the t-shirts that I have. People are always like, oh, I love this t-shirt. I hope you make a bunch of money on it. I'm like, this goes along with my whole, like, I'm not actually trying to make money on anything. Like I get maybe $2 if you buy one of these t-shirts because I don't have to like deal with all the printing and shipping and everything.
Yeah.
But I think they're cool t-shirts. So that's why I have them. So you can go there on my website, fornutrientsake.com. My Instagram is the same thing, fornutrientsake. And then my podcast that I host with Christine Muldoon is called Modern Ancestral Mamas, and you can get it wherever you get podcasts. We are trying to get our YouTube channel going for that, so we'll have video content. But right now, the easiest place to find it is like Spotify and Apple, and I think that's pretty much the only place people get podcasts these days. I don't know.
Right? I don't know.
I think there's maybe one or two other platforms, but those are the two biggest ones.
Yeah, the main ones. But yeah, everything will be in the show notes. If you're still here, thank you for listening and stay rebellious. Thank you, Corey.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, please click the subscribe button. Share it with others, post about it in social media, or leave a rating and review. To catch all the latest from me or suggest topics, you can follow me on Instagram at Fatima Pagtakan or at The Wellness Rebel Show. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.